Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TOEFL 2026 Write an Email Guide. This video is designed to help you obtain the score that you're looking for on the writing section of the TOEFL test. This is the new version for 2026. There have been some changes to this version, so listen carefully and we'll talk about some of those changes and what you can do to obtain the best score possible. So the writing section now contains three different task types. There is a build a sentence task where you have to unscramble a mixed up sentence into the correct word order. There are 9 questions in this one, and basically you're just reorganizing sentences with this one. There's a write an email section where you read a short scenario and you respond with an email that covers the 3 specific mentioned points from it. And there's a write an academic discussion where you have to read a post on a class message board and you have to respond to the discussion with interesting and relevant information. And what we're talking about today is the write an email section. What you can expect from this section of the test is that you're going to be given a short, either social or academic scenario. And what that means is these are scenarios from everyday life, and they're either dealing with kind of general social contexts, things like you have had a bad meal at a restaurant, or you need to make a booking for something, or you need to change the date of a flight, something along those lines, kind of everyday tasks, or academic scenarios, things like you have to sign up for a library card, or you need to know where the dormitories are, or you need to extend a deadline. Things like that are covered under the academic scenarios. These are more what I would describe as like general life on campus scenarios rather than true academic questions, though. So your email has to cover 3 specific points. The points are specifically mentioned in the scenario, but it is extremely important that you are covering and you're mentioning all 3 of these specific points as you go through the response. You have approximately 7 minutes to read the prompt and write your response, so you have to move quite quickly. 7 minutes isn't a lot of time, but there are ways, and if you go into it with a good knowledge and a good overview of what you're going to be writing, 7 minutes should be plenty. You're aiming for about 120 words to 80 words. I find the sweet spot with this one is somewhere in the 100 to 120 word scene. Generally, I find you can do these much quicker. So I find a lot of students, they can genuinely accomplish what is being asked in the email within 40 or 50 words. However, that shows oversimplification of the material. And so you should be looking for that 80 to 120 word limit on this one. Scoring is going to be based on the tone and politeness. So you need to match your tone to what is being expected in this one. For example, if you are angry at a restaurant, then you can bring a little bit of anger into the email. So if you've had a bad email or bad meal or something at a restaurant, then a little bit of impoliteness is to be expected. If you're missed a class and you need to make up the class and you're talking to a professor, then you have to have a little bit of deference, and you have to make sure that you're addressing that professor in an honorific and making sure you're addressing them in a way that is appropriate to the email. Okay. It is also scored on cohesion, so how quickly you're able to flow through the email and how much it makes sense, how much you don't kind of dance around the points that you're trying to present, how straightforward it is. Completeness scores will drop if you miss this section here. So if you fail to cover the 3 specific points, then you miss the completeness. You're also expected to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. In email writing, the introduction is relatively easy. It's just an appropriate greeting. Same with the conclusion. That is just an appropriate goodbye response in the email. But you are expected to have all 3 of those sections in addition to the 3 specific points that you need to pull from the scenario. You're also graded on the grammar, vocabulary, and punctuation. And I'm going to lump these together because they are kind of similar ideas, where if you have complex grammar structures, you have that wide range of vocabulary that's being used, and your punctuation is correct, you should pull off a fairly decent score on this. However, if you are missing some of those points, then even with a perfect response or a very good response, the level of complexity will judge where your score sits at these ones. And the response is graded by an AI scoring engine. So it is a response that goes through a computer. So technicality is very important within this. Here's a little bit of a checklist that you could use to write an appropriate response to the email. And these are the points that you absolutely need to cover when you're going through this one. So you need to cover all 3 required points in the order that they're given. The AI is trained to watch for these. So if you're missing any of the 3 points, your score is going to dramatically lower, even if the grammar, the punctuation, the flow through of the email makes perfect sense. So you need to cover all 3 of the required points and in the correct order. You need to come up with some additional details to elaborate each point, and these are invented details. So, for example, if you've had a bad meal at a restaurant, you maybe need to come up with the date that you had this meal, what the meal was, what the problem was. So you need to invent some plausible details to elaborate each of the ideas that you're trying to communicate in the email. Okay. You need to keep the tone polite. I kind of disagree with this one. You need to keep the tone relevant, although in my experience, it's almost always polite. But I have seen the occasional one where a slightly angrier tone could be appropriate here, although for the most part, you want to keep the tone polite and appropriately formal. Appropriately formal doesn't mean to have an extremely high level of formality. It means matching the formality to the situation. So if you're asking for information about booking a moving truck, you don't need to be particularly formal for that response. If you are asking a professor to forgive an absence, this would require a very high degree of formality. So appropriately formal means matching the formality to the expected response. Okay. You need to vary your sentence structure and vocabulary. This is an important one. You need to show command of English with these ones, and you need to have sentence structures that don't just follow a single repeatable pattern. It would be very easy to answer these questions and just set up a simple sentence structure that repeats throughout, but that's not what we're looking for here with this one. We're looking to show that you have a good command and that you're able to vary the sentence structure and have a wide range of vocabulary to accomplish your goals. You want to avoid repeating keywords, and a great way to do this is just simple substitution of synonyms, and I'll show you this in just a moment. Okay, and again, your target is roughly 80 to 120 words. So this first response is what I would describe as a very good response, although it lacks the complexity. So it matches all of the ideas that we were talking about earlier, where you describe the problem with the product that you received, you explain the circumstances clearly and give evidence, and you request a specific resolution. So the response here is, hello, I recently bought a laptop from your store, order number TP 2026 44891. When the laptop arrived, I opened the box and saw the screen was cracked. The box was not damaged, so I think the laptop was already broken before it was packaged. I did not use the laptop at all. I would like a replacement laptop or a refund. Can you tell me what I need to do next? I can send a picture of the crack if you need it. Thank you, your name here. I do recommend writing your name here. So John Smith or whatever your name is. It doesn't have to be your name. It can be a made up name that's not really important, but you want this to be like a real email as much as possible. So I would describe this as a very good response. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. The language is correct. The vocabulary is correct. The grammar patterns are all completely correct. It does incorporate all three of these ideas. So it describes the problem. When the laptop arrived, I opened the box and saw that the screen was cracked. It explains the circumstances. The box was not damaged, so I think the laptop was already broken before it was packed. And it requests a specific resolution. I would like a replacement laptop or a refund. Okay, so everything is in place for this one to be a relatively perfect response. There's no major issues that I can see. However, this would be a relatively low score because it lacks the complexity and it's just missing a few key ideas. So the first idea that I see that is a little bit problematic here is this idea of hello. Okay, hello is a reasonable response, although it is not an ideal response here. A better response would be to direct this to a individual person. You don't know who you're going to direct this to. Even like if you made up a name, you wouldn't know who you're going to direct it to, but you can take a pretty good guess about who this should be going to. So to the customer service department or to the repairs and refunds department, even things like to whom it may concern would be appropriate starts to this. Okay. And then moving along, we just have kind of a lower level of complexity with this one. So I recently bought a laptop from your store, order number, and then a made up order number. I bought a laptop from your store through the online retailer, which was delivered on the 37th of January, 2026. The order number pertaining to this particular order is TP 2026 44891. You can just see how adding that additional level of complexity, the sentence structures are changing. They're using things like non-defining relative clauses or just a greater degree of complexity to build the sentence structure and the vocabulary in this. That would be a much better response and would get a much higher score on this. When the laptop arrived, I opened the box and saw that the screen was cracked. Immediately upon receiving the laptop and upon opening the box, I noticed that the screen had a large crack running across the entire length of the screen. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing. It just builds on the complexity. And because the complexity is there, it would up the score on this one. Let's talk about a way to improve this. Okay, so increasing the level of complexity is how you're going to handle this one. So this is what I would describe as a very nearly perfect version, depending on who is doing the responses or how the AI has been programmed. So you can see we've already talked about this, but dear customer service team. Okay, a little bit more appropriateness in the response. Okay, your introduction starts, I'm writing to report an issue with the laptop I recently purchased. Okay, some matching information here, and I would probably mix this up a little bit. I recently bought or I recently ordered from your online store would be good ways to do this. There's a multitude of ways to do this. There's nothing particularly wrong with this. I would just, I look at these keywords, and it's always a good idea to try to change the keywords as much as possible while still retaining the same meaning of these. Okay, under the order number, okay, there's our order number again. Although the packaging arrived fully intact, okay, I'm seeing these interesting sentence structures. So we've got a very good connecting word that connects two sentences and shows a bit of surprise. Although the packaging arrived fully intact, okay, there was no damage to the box. The packaging arrived fully intact. You can see how much more complex and how many more ideas that communicates. No visible signs of damage. Okay, the box wasn't broken. There are no visible signs of damage. Just upping the complexity of the sentence structure and then upping the complexity of the vocabulary that you're using for this is going to push your score into a higher level. I discovered a noticeable crack across the screen as soon as I unboxed the device. Okay, this is a really good way to add that complexity again. Okay? And it is filling in these ideas. So you're describing the problem. So what's the problem? Well, there's a crack in the device. Okay. Explain the circumstances clearly. Well, you're already, since I haven't powered it on or used it any way, we're adding this additional level here that wasn't in the previous one. So since I haven't powered it on or used it anyway, I'm confident the damage occurred before shipping rather than afterward. Okay. That really shows a lot of command of English when you're responding to this type of question. Okay. We could easily finish it with, please give me a refund at this point, but the writer of this one has chosen to go with a more detailed second paragraph now to give more details and to explain the circumstances more clearly, adding any evidence. Okay, so I've attached photos showing both the undamaged exterior packaging and the cracked screen, which should help confirm this is a manufacturing or handling issue rather than misuse. Given that the laptop falls well within your 30-day return policy, I'd appreciate either a replacement unit or a full refund, whichever your team can process more quickly. Okay? This is doing an interesting thing. So you don't always need to be like, give me a replacement, give me a refund. This particular person or this particular writer has chosen to do both of them. And they have chosen to give a little bit of extra complexity in here, whichever your team can process more quickly. This is a beautiful way to still to give this information, replacement or refund, but still have that really high level of complexity that goes beyond just give me a replacement. Could you please let me know what steps come next? I'm happy to provide any further information needed. A nice warm response, best regards, and still I would write my name, Bob Jones. It just completes the email. It's better than your name. You can fill it out with your name. You don't necessarily have to change the name on this one. But that is the response I would take, or that is how I would be approaching these emails, to add that level of complexity and that level of sentence structure that varies. Some of these sentences are extremely quick, extremely easy, but some of these sentence structures show a very high level of complexity that demonstrates an ability to use English. And that's what you're looking for with these responses. You're looking for that decent level of complexity, the decent level of vocabulary, while still finishing what is being asked for. So you can see the difference between the basic version of this and the nearly perfect version, and how they both do what is being asked, but one of them does it in a way that shows a higher command of English. And so your goal here is to demonstrate your command of English. So how did these things get scored? Well, what we're looking for when we're scoring these, or what the AI is looking for, is a fully successful response. Okay, this clearly and effectively communicates how the in language that is of a level that proves efficiency in English. Okay, elaboration that genuinely supports the message. Okay, so you build upon the ideas, not just I broke my iPad, or I feel the iPad was broken, but I strongly feel that this must be a shipping or handling issue that was problematic prior to packaging this package, because I noticed the crack immediately upon receipt of the package. It's that elaborate language that allows this to get a 5 score. Varied sentence structure, precise, natural word choice. Sometimes being a little bit too wordy here is problematic, especially if you're using the words in unexpected ways. It can actually lower the grammar score. So be careful, be comfortable. Don't just use words because they're big fancy words. Make sure that you know what the meaning of those words is and how they are to be managed and integrated into this particular assessment. Okay. Consistently appropriate tone, almost no errors beyond what's expected under timed conditions. A few little spelling mistakes or typos here or there aren't going to make a big difference for your response, especially if you've got a very complete response. Okay. Where you're going to start losing a few points with this one is that you have good enough elaboration, but it doesn't show command of the English. Okay. Your sentence structure is good enough, but then the word choice is good enough, but it doesn't, again, show command. It doesn't show off your English skills. Tone mismatch with things like that idea of hello versus to the sales department, etc., and social conventions are maybe mismatched a little bit. And one or two grammar errors or vocabulary errors, especially if you use the right piece of vocabulary, but you use it under the wrong structure or the wrong format. Those are the kind of things that would push your score down a little bit. Okay. As we start to get into the 3s, 2s, and 1s, though, failure to accomplish those 3 tasks is a big no-no with these. That will very quickly reduce your score. Okay. Having a really simple range of sentence structure and vocabulary and some noticeable errors in structure, word forms, idioms, or tone that just don't quite match to what is expected of a native speaker level response will lower your score a little bit. So I would kind of put the first one that we went through as a 3, just because of the level of simplicity. So it catches this, it elaborates, it fully supports the message. However, it does it in a way that really shows limited range of ability in English. Okay. Whereas the second one, I would describe more as a 5 response. Okay. Coming into the 2s, 1s, and 0s, well, the 0 is no score. Basically you've written nothing, or you've written an email to your mother telling her about your last weekend when you're supposed to be asking about a crack in the iPad kind of thing, fully off topic or not written in English, copied directly, just regurgitating the prompt fully. These are the things that would make it a no scoreable response. Extremely ineffective attempt at the task. I got iPad, it was crack, want new iPad kind of thing. That would give a unsuccessful response score of a 1, and a mostly unsuccessful response would be you've tried, you kind of I want iPad was crack, need new iPad, thank you. You tried, but very limited elaboration on the topic, no good sentence structures, some connected language, but for the most part, a very narrow range of grammar and vocabulary that are being used in this. And the errors start to build up, or the wrong word use becomes problematic, and it prevents understanding issues with this. So that's what I would be looking for this writing response. And that level of complexity is how you're going to get the best response possible on this write an email section.